Hey tax students, this is a demonstration video for our Chapter 1 Homework B problem here at our See Now class site. Always before you take a quiz or do your homework, open up your textbook. Yeah, so here I have my textbook already open. That's under this Study Tools tab. And now you can start your assignment. If you start your assignment first and then you try to open up the textbook, it may kick you out of the assignment and you got to start over again. Yeah? So have your book open. Let's start the assignment. Here it says that we have 3 attempts to turn in the whole homework assignment by the due date. So I'm on my first of 3 attempts. Make sure you do the whole homework assignment before using one of your 3 attempts to get the most out of it. So let's click on this Start Assignment Now button. And here you can see for this assignment, we have 2 problems, really 2 tax returns. And I'm going to demonstrate just the first of the 2. So let's collapse this menu to give us more space to work with. And you can see at the top, there's 4 different documents to work with. And I think the easiest way to navigate through the 4 documents is to first open them all up by clicking on them. And instead of this cascading format, we can put everything into one long column by clicking on the right of these 3 buttons here. Now we can use your scroll bar to go up and down those 4 different documents. And here's the instructions at the beginning. Again, this matches the same problem at the end of our chapter. So if I go to my textbook, here the table of contents for this first chapter. Again, to see the table of contents for the whole book, you have to close out the chapter and then go back into the chapter. And here in the first page of that chapter is the objectives for that chapter. And at the end would be the homework problems, some of which we are doing online at our CNOW site. And the typical tax return problems are at the end of the list of problems. Like, let's see, what are we working with here? This one right here, Chapter 1, problem, comprehensive problem 2A. This Richelle and Dallas land. So the same information is given to us here. Yeah. But now we are given it here in our assignments section of See Now. So let's go over the instructions here. We have Richelle and Dallas. They're going to be married filing jointly. Remember, that's a filing status, joint return. And we're given his social security number and birth date, both of them. You would always confirm initially with a taxpayer you don't know the spelling of their name, the actual social security number by looking at their social security card or some document generated by the Social Security Administration. Because if you're 1 letter off in their name, if you're 1 digit off in their social security number, when you submit their tax return, it's automatically going to be rejected. Don't assume that the name you see on this tax form issued by the employer or this, where's the social security number for Dallas? Um, do you see it? I don't see it. Where's the social security number? It should be here someplace on the form, but you know what? You should not rely on that number being accurate. I've seen wrong social security numbers. I've seen nicknames on a W-2 form. Okay? You can't use that when you prepare the tax return. That's also true for any dependents you're claiming on that tax return. Okay, so other facts were given, their address. All of this is entered for us on the tax return already. Richelle doesn't work. That W-2 is for Dallas's job. Also, they say here, they do not own any digital assets. That kind of fact probably should be listed in this bullet points, but let me kind of point it out here on the tax return 1040 form. You can see the name and social security numbers and the address is already filled in for us. What they're telling you about that digital asset is this question here. whether they received anything or sold anything during the year for digital assets like Bitcoin, cryptocurrency. So in a real return, there would be a checkbox here for yes or no. But here we have a drop-down list. Yeah, we're going to just pick no. Okay, some other information we're told here at the beginning in the instructions is that they have a son, Legolas. He looks like he's 20 years old based upon his birth date, 20 as of the 2024 tax year. We're given his social security number. Again, you should confirm this by looking at his social security card if this is the first time we're dealing with this dependent. And the taxpayers provide more than half of Legolas's support, and he lives with them. Legolas is not a full-time student, possibly like some of you are, and his income is relatively low, below the threshold for, I believe, was that $5,050 for a dependent, other dependent. Okay, not the qualifying child dependent, but other dependent. He's not a qualifying child. He's too old for that. Yeah, 20 years old. Let's see. And if he's a dependent, we're told we're going to be claiming the other dependent credit, which is $500 versus the $2,000 child tax credit that we've also learned about here in chapter 1. Okay, so $500 credit if he qualifies, and he's qualifying as dependent. He's already listed down for us on the return. The taxpayers had health coverage for full year, health insurance coverage. This is really a moot point. They don't ask information like this for anymore on the 1040 form like they did in past years. Neither taxpayer wishes to contribute to the presidential election campaign. I'll point that out after going through this list here. Enter all amounts as positive numbers. And if a box is zero, we got to enter zero. Yeah, we cannot keep it blank. And we need to round to the nearest dollar. Yeah, 50 cents and above, we round up to the next dollar. So let me point out here on the tax return, the 1040 form, here this question whether our taxpayers want to have $3 of their taxes they've already paid, they're not going to add anymore, but already paid, to go to this presidential election campaign fund. And again, typically on the real form, there would be check boxes to say yes. And you would, if no, you would leave it blank. But here in our drop-down menu, you would think it would be no, yeah? But I think because both taxpayer and spouse don't want any, we have to use the word none instead. Their filing status, again, in a real form, it would be 5 different checkboxes for the 5 different filing statuses. Here in our homework assignment, we got to pick off in a drop-down list this married filing joint. Digital asset, we already answered. And here for standard deduction, that's the dollar amount we get to subtract out way down here. Yeah, this standard deduction in line 12. And you can get more standard deductions than the basic amounts listed here in the margin if our taxpayers were age 65 or older during the year, or if they were blind, legally blind. Okay, we're told they're in good health. We're told their birth dates are going to have them less than age 65. So we're going to say none. Yeah, not old, not old like me, not blind, and that's also for our spouse. Now for the dependent, again the name and social security number and relationship already there. If that dependent were a qualifying child, again under age 17, you probably would put down here yes, but we're going to put in no. Or really in a real return, you leave this blank, but we got to fill in the blank on our screen here. So he meets the other requirements of being a other qualifying dependent. Yes. Yeah, he lives with the taxpayer. He earns below a certain dollar limit. He's not a qualifying child. Okay, So yes, here eventually will lead to a $500 credit on the next page. Okay, the only income item they have is from his Dallas's W-2 form. So let's go back and grab that number. Here in box 1, 55,400. Because the cents is less than 50, we just drop it, yeah? 55,400. And let me select that and copy it. Okay, you can either drag and Control C or Command C or Control A to select and Control C to copy, because here is a subtotal with the same amount in line 1Z and another subtotal here in line 9 for total income. They don't have any other income. A couple others we had learned about was interest, yeah, I believe, here in chapter 1. We don't have any adjustment deductions in line 10. So the adjusted gross income in line 11 is the same as the total income. Now here in line 12 is that standard deduction. Most people deduct, and the amount is varied based upon the taxpayer's filing status. So here in the left-hand margin, you can see the different filing statuses and the related standard deduction. In our case, it's married filing joint. So 29,200. Okay, enter it as a positive number. And we don't have any amount in line 13, qualified business income deduction. We'll learn about this next semester in our second tax course, Accounting 137 for business taxation. So adding up lines 12 and 13, you're supposed to be reading the description now for each line here. Yeah? Don't just blindly fill it in like I'm kind of doing right now. Is that 29,200. And line 15 is our base, the taxable income. Line 14, subtract line 14 from line 11. Line 14 from line 11. And I cannot do that in my head, so let me bring up my calculator. Line 14 minus line, that was line 11, minus line 14. So 26,200. Let me copy that and I'll paste it here in line 15. Now to the next page of the 1040 form, page 2 is to figure out the tax liability for the whole year based upon the taxable income here at the bottom of the first page. And we learned in chapter 1, we would use something called the tax tables that's listed in the instructions to the 1040 form. If the amount of taxable income here is $100,000 or larger, we would use something called the tax rate schedule, or the tax worksheet, also in the instructions to the 1040 form. And typically, if you're dealing with we're given a link here in the last page, this page 4, to bring up the tax table so we don't have to download the whole 1040 instructions. So here's a blurry copy of the tax tables. And what we're looking for is to look up the taxable income, this 26,200. So we'll go down the table. If I can grab my handle. Here is 26,000. And you're going down these two columns looking for 26,200. Let me see if I can draw here. Let's go red. 26,200 appears here and here. So what you should do is look at the tops of the columns. At least 26,200 is at least 26,200. So that sounds good to use in this column. 26,200 is not less than 26,200. So you don't use that amount here. So the row we're going to be using is this one right here. Now the column we're going to be stopping at is based upon the filing status listed here at the top of the column. In our case, it's married filing joint. We're going to go down this column and stop where the taxable income row is located. So right here, the intersection of the taxable income row and the filing status column. Let me zoom in here. Kind of blurry. 2683. 2683 is our tax liability for the whole year. 2683. Let me copy that because it'll go down here in line 18. Again, read the description in the line. I'm adding up line 16, 2683, and line 17, that's empty. And the credit, oh, I got to put in the $500 credit here. Remember, we're told that in the instructions. That's the other dependent credit for Legolas. In a real life return, we're supposed to fill out this Schedule 8812, which we're not told to do for this homework assignment. But that's the ultimate result, a $500 credit. Adding it to any credits on Schedule 3, which we don't have any, to get the total credits, from which we're going to subtract that out from the tax. That's tax in line 21 minus the credit in line 18. And can I do this in my head? I think I can. 2183. Let me select that amount because that's the total of all the taxes reported on this tax return. Nothing here in line 23. Now the taxes we already paid, we got to go back and take a look at the W-2 form. So Dallas's W-2 form, not just the taxable wages, but here's three different taxes. The one we're dealing with is the income tax, federal income tax. If you take a look at the bottom of the W-2 form, because their residence is Texas, Texas doesn't have any individual income tax. Yeah, tax-free, not like here in Hawaii. But let's grab that 32.50. Notice the cents, 81 cents. Because it's more, 50 cents or more, we got to round up to the next dollar. So 32.58. 32.58 and subtotal. And subtotaled again. So line 34. If line 33, 32.58, is more than line 24, more than this 21.84, that's true, then we take the difference, subtract, yeah? I cannot do that in my head, so where's my calculator? 32.58 minus 21.83 is 1,075 overpaid for the whole year. And of course, most people assume automatically it's going to be refunded to them, which is true in our case. Or an option, if you think you're going to be owing taxes next year, what you may want to do is apply that overpayment credit to this estimated for, in this case, 2025, which we're not doing. I think that's it. There's no other blank to fill in. Make sure the occupation is filled in, yeah? Okay, and to be double sure I hit all the boxes, I'm going to click in this last box and move backwards by using the Shift and Tab key. Yeah, Tab will move you to the next field to fill in. Yeah, Shift Tab will move you backwards. So I'm looking at all these blue boxes, blue filled in fields I've already completed. And if I see an empty box, that means I missed something. Yeah. Shift Tab to move backwards. I'm right here now. Yeah, I answered the question. Look, I missed this one here. The question is whether the taxpayer, I tell you what, let me check my work before I answer this one. For every problem, in this case the whole form, I have 3 check my work attempts, which you've already tried using in the previous homework assignment. Yeah, not for the whole homework, but just this problem. So let me click on it. And if I scroll through the return, you can see the green check marks for correct. If I answered something wrong, it will be red. Even these questions are checked off green. But notice it didn't show red here. How come? Because I didn't answer it. Yeah, when you don't answer, it doesn't even give you a red X. So you gotta, oh, and you know you're not perfect. If I scroll down, notice it's not half of the homework assignment, yeah? One of the 2 returns. I'm missing something here, and it's this one here. So the thing about the standard deduction, it may not necessarily be these standard amounts over here. Could be more, could even be less. And it's the way you would answer this question here that may determine, besides these 2 here, whether the standard deduction may be different. In our case, our taxpayers, that's Dallas and Richelle, cannot be claimed as a dependent on someone else's return. Someone can claim as a dependent. Yeah. So we're gonna say none here. I tell you what, let me purposely answer it wrong. You as a dependent, or Richelle as a dependent, or both of them as a dependent. Let me check my work again and take a look at that answer. Okay, now you see the red X because this is wrong and not just left empty. Yeah. Look, I have one more check my work attempt. Now keep in mind, after I submit the whole homework assignment, the next time I try this whole homework assignment, this will reset to 3 more check my work attempts. Again, so there's no reason why you should not get a perfect 100% for homework assignments. But let me go ahead and fix this up anyway. Yeah, none. And use my last of the check my works for this one attempt. Yay, green. Okay. And 50% because I know there are 2 problems. Yeah, 50-50. So do not submit this problem yet. Yeah, do not submit it until you finish the whole 2 problems for this homework assignment. And you'll see your score. You may see what's wrong, not necessarily what's the correct answer, but you'll reset on your second submission, on your second attempt, your 3 check my work. If I go into the second problem, is this the second? No, this is the second problem. I should have 3 check my works for this second problem here. Yeah, okay, that's per problem. And here, 3 submissions for the whole homework assignment. Okay, that's it for now. I'll talk with you later.